Good evening. I would like to call to order the February 5th, 2024 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all board members are present, and we have one of our student representatives with us this evening, Shivani. The board values public participation and engagement in the meetings of the board. Board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the LWSD website and are available for viewing following the conclusion of the board meeting. The public are always welcome to email any individual board member at boardmembers@lwsd.org. Shivani, would you like to read our land acknowledgement?
Yeah. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District acknowledges that our district is on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights on this land, including the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived here since time immemorial. We commit to continue collaborating with our Native community to teach the indigenous history of this land and these local tribes to all children of the district. We also commit to provide the best possible education for all children of Native descent who attend our schools.
I will now entertain a motion to approve the February 5th, 2024 agenda.
So moved.
Second.
On the agenda, I'd like to,
1 second. It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Guthrie to approve the agenda as presented. Did you have a
yes,
point?
I'd like to be able to, for the one item on that, I'd like to be able to add to the record my attorney's letter to the board, so it can be posted along with the other documents, and I'd like to have that added to the agenda for the item on the censure.
So I don't believe that's an agenda item. So you're requesting for the board to.
Well, I guess when we come to that time for the discussion of the agenda, perhaps that's.
There will be a time for discussion following the first non-consent item. Okay. So it has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Guthrie to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The next item on our agenda this evening is public comment. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board and encourages community engagement. The board dedicates 30 minutes to hear from the public during the public comment period of the meeting. Participants should not expect a response from the board at the end of their comments, as we dedicate this time to listening to your voice and would like to get as many members of the public an opportunity to speak as the time allows. Members of the public can sign up to participate on the district website at lwsd.org/board/public comments. Sign up closes at noon on the day of the board meeting, and comments will be offered in the order of sign up. If you have signed up to speak, but you are not able to attend the meeting, you may designate another person to speak in your place by sending an email to publiccomment@lwsd.org before noon on the day of the meeting. The email must include the new speaker's name, their email, and their topic. If the If the original speaker is not present at the board meeting and has not notified LWSD of a replacement in writing by the deadline, the board will move to the next speaker. Substitutions at the meeting will not be accommodated. I believe we have 2 people signed up for public comment this evening. The first person is Layla Ahmed, who I'm not seeing, I don't think. No? And the other person we have signed up is Sarah Duke. Okay. Is there anyone here that was signed up that I didn't call? Just want to make sure. Okay. So we don't have any people present for public comment this evening in person. We did have a few submissions of written public comment, which I encourage my fellow board members to go through and read. It's available on board docs. The topics range from safety and education, free and reduced lunch, and Cascadia College updates. The next item, sorry, I keep coughing. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the February 5th, 2024 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval.
It has been moved by Director La Liberty and seconded by Director Yocum. Superintendent Holman, will you please poll the board?
Absolutely. Director Guthrie,
Yes.
Director Yocum,
Yes.
Director Stewart,
Yes.
Vice President La Liberty,
Yes.
and President Choi.
Motion carries. Superintendent Holman, will you please summarize the donations this evening?
Yes, tonight in the board's packet, you have a donation from the Lake Washington Schools Foundation for $15,000. Since there's just one donation tonight, I also want to call out what that's for. It's in support of our LINKS program, which is a volunteer support program, provides students with lunch buddies and access to those much needed personal relationships to keep them engaged in school. And just want to thank our Lake Washington Schools Foundation for their ongoing support of our community and students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Holman. The first item on our non-consent agenda this evening is a resolution for censure. Resolution 2364 is presented to the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors for consideration. This resolution for censure is related to an independent investigation into concerns related to the manner in which Director Mark Stewart dealt with an anonymous phone call that a complainant received on November 20th, 2023. The investigation reviewed potential violations of board policy and the law, and the board has received and reviewed an investigation report dated January 14th, 2024. As presented, Resolution 2364 states that during the course of his term, Director Stewart violated board policies and the established code of conduct as specifically articulated in the investigation report, and that his behavior falls below the high ethical standards the board expects from its directors in relation to a school community member and in relation to fellow school board directors. With respect to board policies pertaining to conduct with a school community member, Director Stewart committed the following violations. 1. Engagement in communication that did not maintain constructive two-way communication. 2. Engagement in communication that did not reflect the level of responsibility, integrity, and ethical standards and community values that the board requires of its members. 3. Engagement in communication that misused his authority as a board member. 4. Engagement in communication that lacked the appropriate decorum and candor expected when acting as a board member. With respect to board policies pertaining to conduct amongst fellow board directors, Director Stewart committed the following violations. 1. Engagement in communication and activities that limited the board's ability to act as a single unit and with complete information. 2. Engagement in communication and activities with his fellow board members that did not reflect the level of integrity and ethical standards the board expects. 3. Engagement in communication with his fellow board members that was repeatedly not honest or truthful. 4. Engagement in communication and activities with his fellow board members that broke trust and prevented effective governance. 5. Engagement in communication and activities that caused fellow board members to be embarrassed. Resolution 2364 further states that pursuant to the board's authority under applicable law and policy, the board takes the following actions. 1. Director Mark Stewart is hereby publicly censured for his conduct in violation of board policies and code of conduct. 2. Director Stewart is hereby suspended and removed effective immediately from serving in any capacity as the board's legislative chair. And 3. Director Stewart is hereby suspended and removed effective immediately from serving on any of the board's committees and from serving as the board's representative to any district committees and any civic organizations. I will now accept a motion to approve Resolution 2364.
Motion to approve Resolution 2364 as presented.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Guthrie and seconded by Director Yocum. Is there further discussion? Yes, Director Stewart.
I'd like to ask that my attorney's January 19th, 2024 letter to the board be placed in the public record It's only fair that the public have a clear understanding of my perspective of the investigator's report is flawed in important ways, including but not limited to her misrepresenting some of what I told her. She was not correct. She did not correct the misstatements when we pointed them out. The report does not capture how quickly the events unfolded, and that I wish I had requested help in the pressure of that moment. I have learned a lot, and I wish I'd handled things differently. Finally, the board's resolution today, stripping me of my civic responsibilities, capitalizing on the good relationships I've built with our legislators and others, will harm, not help, many community members, staff, students, and parents alike who have come to rely on me to help them advance their needs as a member of this board. I'd like to have this letter posted along with the other materials for this meeting.
Currently, there is a motion on the floor. I think that you can make a second motion to add your letter to the record. If you'd like to make the motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to add this letter to the record and be posted along with the other documents that pertain to this resolution online.
Second. Okay. Hearing none. Motion denied. Is there any other discussion? Director Guthrie.
Mark, we've known each other for many years. I've long appreciated you and the many wonderful qualities that you bring to the board. You're the reason that I'm sitting up here right now, and I will always be grateful to you for that. I've not appreciated your actions over the past 2 months in relation to this whole situation. It's been painful to witness. It's been painful to experience. I expect this board to exhibit thoughtfulness, respect, and integrity in our interactions with the community and with one another. On those inevitable occasions when we fall short of our ideals, I expect us to hold ourselves accountable so we grow and learn how to do better. We can't possibly expect our students, staff, and community to demonstrate these behaviors if we can't even model them ourselves. As I've considered this resolution before us, I've checked myself a million times to ensure that I'm not approaching it with anger or bitterness, but with thoughtfulness, respect, and integrity, and accountability. I fully support this resolution.
We will proceed to vote on the motion to accept the resolution 2364 as written. Superintendent Holman, will you please poll the board?
Yes, Director Guthrie,
Yes.
Director Yoakum, Director Stewart,
No?
Vice President La Liberty,
Yes.
and President Choi.
Yes. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda this evening is the data research
Hey.
and yes.
Could I, given the censure, could I make a motion now? I'm sorry, the
Yes.
resolution we just adopted.
Sorry. Yes.
I move to amend the agenda to add to the agenda the election of a legislative representative to the board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Has been moved by Vice President Liberty and seconded by Director Yoakum to amend the agenda to add the election of a legislative representative for the board. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing no discussion, we will proceed to vote on the motion. It has been moved by Vice President Liberty and seconded by Director Yoakum that the board elect a legislative representative. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
I guess I should have clarified. Are we taking that as the next agenda item, or is it going to be at the end of the non-consent?
Yes, I interpreted that as the next agenda
That
item.
was my intent.
Nominations are now open then for a legislative representative for the board.
Director Guthrie for legislative rep.
Director Guthrie has been nominated for a legislative representative of the board. Are there any other nominations for a legislative representative? As there are no other nominations for a legislative representative of the board, I declare the nominations to be closed. There has been one nomination for legislative rep, and that is Director Guthrie. We will do a roll call vote.
Director Guthrie,
Yes?
Director Yocum,
Yes.
Director Stewart,
Yes.
Vice President La Liberty,
Yes.
and President Choi.
Yes, Director Guthrie is elected by unanimous vote to be the legislative representative for our board. Congratulations. The next item on our agenda is now the Data Research and Accountability Program update. Dr. Holman.
Yes, and so I'm excited to welcome Director of Data Research and Accountability up to the podium, Tim Krieger. It's been a while since we've had an update from this department, and as you know, this department has reach into the entire organization. Tim and his team literally work with every department, and they touch data related to every employee and every student throughout the school year. And so you can imagine with that level of responsibility and that level of reach, the impact that they have on the organization. I'm excited for Tim to be here tonight to really express how that impact has increased over time and how he's leveraging that to really benefit students and to support our equity initiatives across the district. So with that, I will hand it off to you, Tim. Welcome to the meeting.
There we go. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. My name is Tim Krieger. I'm the Director of Data Research and Accountability. I want to first start with a general overview of what our department does. So what do? We focus on the life cycle of data from entry to reporting. The department is responsible for the support and training of data tools used in this life cycle. We provide services in data analysis and educational research, and we implement the state assessment program. So the way I think about it is the moment data is created to the moment we use it, that's one of the big functions of our department. Who we are, we're a team of 13 employees who value responsiveness, continuous improvement, accuracy and compliance, customer service, and the humanization of data. And I'll expand more on that, what humanization of data is later on. This is our department structure. We have an admin assistant, an assessment coordinator, a specialist, also known as a TOSA, a data services manager who leads a team of 6 data services coordinators and 2 data scientists. You can think of our department in essentially like 3 buckets, which is the title of the department, Data Research and Accountability. There's certainly crossover between all 3 of these buckets. For tonight, I'll use this framework, though, as a general overview of what we do and highlight some of the things we do in each of these buckets. Like Dr. Holman said, one theme I want to emphasize is that the work of the department crosses over with essentially every other department in the organization, whether that's through a connection to Skyward, data, and/or assessment. So we'll first start in the data area. So our team supports the Skyward system. Skyward is the software that we use for our student information system, as well as our fiscal and HR systems. Skyward is used by most school districts in Washington State and is supported through a cooperative called WSIPSI. Our data services coordinators support the organization in configuration and training of the software. Since September 1, we've handled more than 2,200 help tickets, mostly related to questions around the system, most of these from staff, but some do come from parents. We also support state and federal reporting. Most of our student reporting occurs through the state data system, which is called CEDARS. Through Skyward, we upload approximately 850,000 records every week. That's data that's used to populate much of the Washington State report card. That data is everything from student demographic information, attendance grades, course schedules, special program data, teacher certifications, etc. And an example of a federal report that we support with many departments across the organization providing data for this is the Civil Rights Data Collection, which is a compilation of reports that cover everything from like algebra course taking to AB course taking to school discipline, student counselor ratios, et cetera, and that's done for every school in the country, and that's available on the Civil Rights Data Collection website. So I'm going to highlight two projects in the data area. First, probably the biggest project we're doing this year and we've been working on for a few years is our Skyward migration project. We currently use a version of Skyward called SMS 2.0, and it's almost 20 years old. And some of you may realize that when you log in, it looks 20 years old. So I'm excited to announce that we are going to be moving to the new version of Skyward. It's still a Skyward product, and it's called Cumulative, and we'll be migrating in July of 2024. You'll see an improved interface, improved data structure. It'll be quicker. There's validation at the point of entry, so that's going to really cut down on some of our state reporting errors that we get. There's a long list of improvements, and I think we provided in a board brief earlier. This is a huge project. We'll be migrating in July, like I said, and that affects everything from family access to student access to teacher access to our HR, fiscal systems, teacher gradebook. Basically, everything will be new. I don't know. I didn't mention it's a SQL-based platform, and we're basically coordinating with 26 departments right now on the project, and ultimately we'll be training every employee in the organization and providing resources to support every parent and student in the system. Another project our department has been helping from a technical standpoint is our online course catalog. In the past, every secondary school had a PDF course catalog, and that changes to that course catalog were submitted. They were adjusted by the graphic designer and then back and forth. This was a huge amount of time to maintain, and we also ended up with discrepancies between schools in terms of what the course descriptions said. So we might have a course description for Algebra 1 in one school that said something and a completely different course description for the same course in another school. We also had issues with course requirements being varied across schools and also the course designation codes that go in the transcripts. Those course designation codes are a big deal because those are the things that we use for our guaranteed admission program. So we mark, like every school in the state, on the transcript any course that's considered a cater course, which is a college. It's basically a course that helps students prepare for college. And we use that data for our guaranteed admissions programs, or program. And so that has to be accurate. So one of the things the online course catalog has done is helped our accuracy of data across all the schools, provides families and students an opportunity to translate. So you'll see in the image on the right there, there's a translation button for language. It's mobile friendly. And something new, it allows schools to link multimedia. So several of our schools are having the teacher make little videos of what the course is about, and then we link that directly into the course catalog. So it gives the students a little bit more information on what to expect with the course, and they can make their appropriate selections. The second bucket is research, which really is kind of an extension of our data. So you'll see some overlaps. We support a variety of Power BI dashboards, as you know. Though I don't want to state that everything is appropriate for a dashboard. Sometimes we get data requests that aren't appropriate for a dashboard. They might be appropriate for an Excel file, or it might be appropriate for a Word document. Additionally, the team supports the board reporting that you see in OE and results reporting, and I'm going to highlight a few projects that are part of this part of our department. So we've been working to ensure that our system is taking a balanced data approach. This work is grounded in the text Street Data by Shane Saphir and Jamila Dugan. It's the text there called Street Data, which I believe you have a copy of. It lays out a framework that helps us imagine a data system where we use multiple types of data. So the three types of data include street data, map data, and satellite data. Much of the data that's presented to boards is on the satellite data that you'll see there. Those are like SBA scores, FastBridge scores, attendance rates, graduation rates. The next level of data is map data. This is going to give us a little bit more focused directions. This could include things like FastBridge subtest scores. It could include panorama reports. And then finally, we have street data. And street data is the data that helps us understand the actual experiences and stories of our students, families, and staff. This can be through interviews, focus groups, learning walks, and more. This is the data that truly helps shape our next moves. So the admin team at schools and across the district have been engaged in professional development around the text for the last year and a half. An example of a specific type of professional development we engaged with in August is we did a case study on transfer students. And we looked at transfer students from all types of data. So we looked at their graduation rates and demographics, which would be the satellite data. We looked at their panorama sense of belonging scores, and then how counselors perceived their roles in the transfer student process. That would be an example of map data. And then we also brought examples of notes from student focus groups and parent interviews from transfer students on their experiences. So all principals engaged in this look at this case study with the hope that they would kind of take that as a model when they go back to their schools, developing their school improvement plans and collecting street data, map data, and satellite data to develop their school improvement plans. A couple other projects I want to highlight that kind of show this balanced data approach. We're currently engaged with 2 schools right now on having their students look at panorama data and help us interpret what the panorama data says. So typically we have adults that are looking at data sets and interpreting it. This is a chance for the students to look at the data that they gave us to help us become more enlightened to what it means. That project is specifically through a partnership with the Strategic Data Project, which is through the Center for Educational Policy Research through Harvard. We have one of our data scientists, actually both data scientists have been going through the program. One has graduated through it and one is in his second year. And basically they've helped sponsor a project, and this is the project that data scientist is working on. Another project the department has been supporting is our native staff co-design work, which is through a partnership with the University of Washington. Savannah Milford, a principal at Keller Elementary, is leading this work, which is looking at a co-design model based on Dr. Ann Nishimura's work. The focus of this work is on the recruitment and retention for Native educators in the Lake Washington School District through community building. It may also expand into connections to supports for Native students as well as Native staff, student voice in our curriculum. The first session was held in December and was attended by Dr. Ishimaro and several graduate students that are in the cohort to support the work. Another thing that's very important in the data and research world is to have good data literacy. And one example I want to bring up, because we talk a lot about various demographics, is the complexities of federal race ethnicity reporting. And we've been doing some professional development for our principals for the last year and a half on this issue, and really trying to ensure we're increasing the visibility for our students. So I want to just give an example. If you go to the Washington State Report Card right now and you look up how many American Indian Alaska Native students are listed, and you'll see the number 54. So that's what the Washington State Report Card will say. And that can lead to many misconceptions that we might have only 54 Native students in this district. The reality is there's 316 students that have identified, at least through their enrollment, as Native in this district. So this graphic here shows the 54 students that are visible in Washington State reporting, and then the 262 that are essentially invisible in the way that federal state reporting happens. And the reason for that, and I could spend a whole session on this, but I'll just briefly explain, is we have 54 students that identify only as American Indian Alaska Native, and we have 262, there's something with the formatting there, 262 students that identify as Native, but they also identify as Hispanic Latino, or they identify as another race, either white, Native Hawaiian, Black, or Asian. And so they get counted in those other categories. Our third bucket is accountability, and this includes our support for school improvement plans for principals and our support of assessments. Tonight I'm going to do a quick overview of some of the assessments. Much of the information I'm describing can be found in more depth on the assessments and surveys page on the district website. So we have the Smarter Balance Assessment. We give it annually in the spring. It's grades 3 through 8 and grade 10. The scoring is a level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and level 3 and 4 are considered meeting standard. or proficient. A few other things to be aware of as you look at SBA results is, one, to be aware it started in 2014-15. Spring of 2020 was skipped, and spring of 2021 was moved to fall of 2021. Meeting a specific cut score can meet the graduation pathway requirement. And there are opportunities for families to see sample items and practice tests. I'm providing a couple tonight. These are just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Not really going to perseverate on the content of the item. But this is a sample SBA question for grade 4 math. It's a multiple choice. It's done online. And this is an example of a grade 8 ELA question. You'll notice there's a text on the left and then a question on the right, and the students would read the text, scrolling through it, and then they type in their answer on the right. There are other types of questions, not just multiple choice and fill in, and those can be seen through the practice and training tests that families and students have access to. WCAS is the next one I want to highlight. This is our science assessment, also given annually, but only to grades 5, 8, and 11. It has the same scoring as the SBA with level 1, 2, 3, and 4, with level 3 and 4 meeting standard. And the first year that WCAS was given was in 2017-18. And again, 2020 was skipped, and 2021 was moved to the fall of 2021. This is an example of a science question. You see there's a graphic, and the students interpret the graphic. This is also an online test. I didn't mention the SBA is adaptive, which means the questions change as the student goes along. Sometimes they get harder and easier depending on how the student does. The WCAS is not adaptive. The next assessment is called the WA-AIM. And WA-AIM stands for Washington Access to Instruction and Measurement in ELA Math and Science. This is annual state testing as well, grades 3, 8, 10, 11. And this is for students with significant cognitive disabilities, and they have been identified by their IEP team to take this assessment instead of the SBA or WCAS. Similar scoring method, and it also meets the graduation pathway requirement if they meet the cut score. The way the WA-AIM works is there are standards, and for each standard, the teacher will choose either a more complex performance task, an intermediate one, or a less complex task based on the student's need. And so the teacher chooses the appropriate level, and then there are 5 standards that the teacher chooses for each content area. The standards are chosen, the teacher chooses the level, but there's 5 for ELA and then 5 for math and 5 for science if they're doing science that year. This would be an example of sort of the either more, intermediate, or less for a specific grade 4. Students will write multiple sentences about more than one idea. Students will write at least one sentence about one topic, or student will write about one topic. So that's an example of how the teacher chooses the access point for the standard, and then the teacher will then choose from a list of different performance tasks, and they can adapt those as well. The WIDA is our annual state testing for students receiving multilingual services. This is grades K-12, and there's a screener version which is given to students when they at enrollment based on their answers to the home language survey. And then the access summative is those who are receiving multilingual services, and based on that score may exit. There's a proficiency level of 1 to 6, and this replaced the ELPA 21 2 years ago. So there's just different criteria. The students that take the WIDA screener, depending on what score they get, that determines if they're eligible or ineligible for multilingual services. And then there's exit criteria for the summative, and we just started the summative a couple weeks ago, so right in the middle of testing for ML students. And depending on the score and the grade level, there's sort of these different business rules to determine if the student exits. So K1, they have to get a 4, 2.12, a 4.7, and just added this year is students who score between 4.3 and 4.6, and depending on what they got on the SBA, can exit services. So this is a new element to the criteria for exiting. This is a sample reading question from the WIDA for grades 2-3.
Really quick, can you explain? I just answered
okay.
my own question. Never mind. Thank you.
This is just a sample WIDA question for grades 2-3. Just the students read it and then they choose their answer. WaKids is another assessment, and specifically it's called the Whole Child Assessment, and the vendor is Teaching Strategies Gold. It's given in the fall for all kindergartners, and it's a rubric. I'll show you a sample here in just a second. And when we say WaKids, the Whole Child Assessment is just one part of it. The family connection meetings is one part, and then early learning collaboration is the second part, and the Whole Child Assessment is the third part. There are 20 objectives on the WaKids assessment, and this is just an example of 5 of them. In literacy, there's actually 6 areas. Literacy is an area, and then there's 5 objectives under literacy. There's a rubric that the teacher uses to score the student, and this isn't like a test. Like they don't. It's an observational assessment. So over the course of from the beginning of the school year to November 15th, when the teacher has to submit the scores to the state, they're observing the student, and then they're rating the student on all 20 objectives. And there's this rubric. So for example, this is identifies and names letters, and you'll see that level 2 is recognizes and names a few letters, to all the way to level 8, which is identifies and names all upper and lowercase letters when presented in random order. So the teacher will basically determine what level the student is at in each of those objectives. And each objective has a rubric like this. The PSAT, that stands for the preliminary SAT, and just so you know, a few years ago, the College Board dropped the meaning of the SAT, so it no longer stands for Scholastic Achievement or Aptitude Test, it's just SAT. So PSAT stands for Preliminary SAT. We give that in October to all our 10th graders and 11th graders who opt in. 11th graders are eligible for the scholarship. Scores range numerically, and this last October was the first time the digital PSAT was given, so all our students took it digitally. Sample question. The SAT, like I said, the SAT has no longer a meaning as an acronym. We give this on the same day as the PSAT for 12th graders who opt in. We had a little over 550 students take the SAT this past October. That was on paper. Next October, the SAT will be digital for us as well. And 2 more assessments. World Language Competency Assessment our department gives. These are year-round opportunities provided to students in grades 8 through 12, and they can get language credit outside of taking the actual course. The score the students gets equated to 0 to 4 credits earned. Last year, we gave 541 assessments. 97% of those students earned at least 1 credit, and 72% of them earned the maximum of 4 credits. And we gave the assessment in 54 different languages last year, and it was just expanded to middle schools. So students can get that credit before they even step into 9th grade. This is an example. So the World Language Competency Testing, it's listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So this is an example of a writing question. So what would happen is in English, it says, describe any homework assignment you had in the past and discuss some of its major challenges. So that prompt would be given in the native language, and then the students would write their response in the native language. And then this is sent off to a scoring company who scores it. And lastly, FastBridge is given 3 times each year: beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. That's what the BOI, MOI, EOI stands for. It's grades K-8. And the students are, levels are either at risk or on track. And it's our universal screener for reading and math. That's a sample question. Some of these, this one, I don't know the grade level. This was the only one that I was available on their website because some of these are vendors and I can't, because of copyright, take their question and publish it. So I just want to leave you with how our department is expanding our vision. So traditionally, we think of data as these quantitative outcomes, like these line charts. Or we think of research as like, books and Hattie's effect size. Or accountability as the Washington School Improvement Framework. And these are all important things. But what our goal is to sort of expand this as data is also student story and voice. Research is also student and voice as research from our families and students and staff. And accountability is not just the Washington School Improvement Framework, it's also to our students and families. So this is kind of the vision that we've been really trying to move in our department. And I appreciate your time tonight, and I take any questions.
I know, Director
Or
Guthrie.
no questions, it was so thorough.
She gave me
I
one.
know Director Guthrie has questions.
I recognize that one. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for all of this work. It's mind-boggling, honestly, what 13 people put together. I know how much work goes into, a report like we're about to look at for R2. So know that it's very much seen and appreciated. I'm intrigued by sort of your bottom row here and how you're expanding your vision of data and incorporating more student story and voice. Selfishly, I would love to know if you have any thoughts on how you're going to share that with the board. I will admit I zoomed in on this slide when I was reviewing it to see what the notes were on that little student focus group slide. And I know Deputy Superintendent Beebe brought some of that to us when we were talking about graduation pathways, that this had happened. But do you have any thoughts on sharing that in a more regular and maybe formal is the wrong word, but just making sure that we're able to leverage that too as a board?
Yeah, I think about it in a couple ways. One, we don't ever want to hide data, and we want to ensure that we share it appropriately. And at the same time, we want to ensure that the data that we share, we do something with, right? And sometimes we can, I'm not saying this is what would happen, but we can pass around data and look at it. And a lot of families and students, they put their heart out there particularly these student stories and voices. And so one of the things that we're really wanting to ensure, and we're kind of careful with, is how do we treat that data, and asking permission, right? And telling people this is how it's going to be used. So I think that's part of it is so for example, this one that you see in the middle, this was our student focus groups at Redmond High School. And we specifically said that this data is going to be, can we use your voice? We're not going to put your name on it, but we're going to use it with administrators. And they were like, yes. So part of it's getting that permission up front of, before we're going to also share it publicly and we're going to put it out here in the very, very public world. So I'd want to make sure that that's part of the process. Did you want to add more?
I think another aspect of this is the board being very specific about what voice that the board wants to spend time hearing. And because we can't do it all, and so being really intentional about what aspect of the board's work does the board want to probably have a more consistent experience on. That's part of that's the annual work plan, so that we're thoughtful, that we're planning, that's kind of that honoring of the people's voice that is coming into the space, that we know what we're going to do with it after we've had that experience with them. I know I've heard from Deputy Superintendent Gillingham the extractive comment, the sharing of that purpose with them as opposed to just getting information from people is an important part of this too. So I think it's a really important part, because it's, that street level data helps inform all of those other aspects of data that the board traditionally will continue to see through monitoring reports, but it helps provide, it illuminates all of those data. So to me, it's about just being really thoughtful and planful about in our upcoming planning cycle for what data do we want to dig into, and how do we do that well, and probably partner with the various department leaders. Tim, I think about Pablo and his team, like they all can be, Johnny Fu, again, another expert in providing support for this. So.
I don't know if you saw the news earlier today, Tim, but for those of us who thought SAT was going away, Dartmouth has reinstituted SAT, so FYI.
Yeah, I did see that.
And I don't know what FYI goes to SAT or not.
Yeah. We have over 1,000 students last year that took the SAT, and so I don't see that number probably declining right now, particularly with some schools flipping from optional to required. So.
A couple of specific questions. You were talking about the migration from Skyward to Cumulative, and I was wondering, is there a plan for offering training for families with the new interface and kind of what that exposure or in transition is going to look like from a user standpoint?
Yeah, we don't have our specific plans yet, but we're seeing it in sort of like 3 ways for students and families. One is, obviously through videos. We have some videos on the website. And then I know some schools have been doing like family nights where they've been training Skyward, and we're going to have to redo all of those and support those schools that have been doing that. And so that's the plan for right now. And then the third part is getting some words out early so people can start seeing them. We're talking about March, April to start putting in newsletters, just, hey, it's coming, some little maybe videos that show some of how the interface is going to work. But much of the functionality will be similar. I don't anticipate many like significant changes in like what people have access to. It will be essentially the same sort of set of data, but in a new sort of interface.
A more user-friendly interface. Is that a fair way to?
Yeah. But I would say even it's user-friendly, but it takes a while to get used to, right? And it's going to be like, driving in a different kind of car. It's like, where is this? Where is this? Where's this button? And then over time, people are like, oh, this is actually better than it was before.
My last question was regarding assessments for our younger students, specifically SBA. I was curious, since everything is digital, and the first year that they're taking SBA is 3rd grade, I'm just reflecting back to my own son's computer skills at this point in 2nd grade, and I was curious, how does that, what does a readiness prep for students look like before they have to take an SBA assessment in terms of their computer use abilities?
So we are required to ensure all students are trained before the SBA. That's part of the requirement for OSPI, that the students have gone through some kind of training. So at a minimum, they go through the training test. So all teachers have lead them through that. And there's a little lesson plan. More often than not, a lot of teachers are also not just doing the training tests, they're doing what are called interim tests also as practice, which are little blocks. So a teacher can sort of choose a topic, say like decimal place value or something, and they can give, it's like a little 10-minute or 10 question assessment that looks and feels just like the SBA, but the teacher gets actual input and see back from those assessments. So a lot of teachers are using not just the training test, but they're using like an interim assessment sort of to do the training, but also to actually get feedback on their instruction.
Director Yoakum.
Hi, thank you very much. That was wonderful. I was going to ask a question now about SBA, and I was going to maybe save it for R2 monitoring, but since you're here, I thought I'd ask. When you receive the data from SBA, the results, and I'm assuming that is broken up based by strand, whether it's reading, writing, listening, research, inquiry. Do you have that data available by those strands?
So unfortunately, not anymore. So when COVID happened, they during fall, when they did the first test back, they shortened the test. And they actually got a lot of feedback that shortening the test was a good thing. But when you shorten the test, you have less questions, which means you can't really give a student a really, really accurate score in like a refined area. So what used to be is you used to get a level 1, 2, 3, or 4, you got a scale score, and you got, like for ELA, you got a writing, a reading, a research inquiry score. And so you had a lot of data there. So those, they were called claim scores, like the reading, writing, research inquiry. Those are no longer given at the student level or at like a classroom level. That will at least continue this spring, so there's no intent to expand the test, but Smarter Balance is looking to see if they can mess with their algorithm to provide more individual student scores. That being said, teachers do have access to what's called target data. It's not hugely useful, but for a whole group of students, either like a classroom or the whole school grade level, they can get a report that says out of all of these, it's almost like at a standard level, which ones did the students do the best on and which ones did the students do the worst on, sort of relative to each other. So then they can get some feedback back and say, okay, these are areas that overall students we might want to focus on this next year. But we don't get that target level data at the individual student level. So you can't like say this specific student did this on this target.
Okay. I was going to ask a follow-up question. Do you feel then that data that we see when we have SBA scores, and if we're trying to look specifically at reading, that is a good measure of reading when we know that it has reading, writing, speaking, listening, research inquiry in it?
So you have to be very cautious to take an SBA ELA score and correlate that with a reading score, because you could have a student that does really well in writing and really well in research inquiry and maybe not as well as reading. And so that's why you sort of have to triangulate that with their SBA score, their reading at, K4 on the report card, or reading at grade level for K4 students, their reading report card scores, and their FastBridge reading. And that's where you really get the targeted scores on reading.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
That helps.
All of the questions? Thank you so
you.
much.
Okay.
Tonight, the next item on our agenda is monitoring of results 2, academic content, knowledge, and skills, one of our 3 results policies. Through these policies, the board establishes its values about how the school district is expected to operate and the express conditions that must exist as business is conducted. The monitoring reports contain the superintendent's interpretation of policy language and a review of current conditions and monitoring data. The monitoring actions make up part of the board's oversight of the organization and assures the board that its standards have been met. Following the presentation, the board will have an opportunity for questions and comments. Dr. Holman, will you please present a summary of the monitoring report?
Yes, and so tonight to present to the board around results 2 is Dr. Jen Rose. And as you remember, we just recently updated results 2. And the idea was that we presented to the board, if we narrow the focus on what we're monitoring in results 2, we believe we can provide you with a better report and greater information about how the system is performing and our response to system performance. And so I believe the presentation you'll see tonight is truly a presentation from our Chief Academic Officer about the holistic view of how are we responding to the charge that the board has given us related to student outcomes. And so tonight will be a much different results 2 report than the board has ever received, but that really is because the board has chosen to narrow the focus on the data that we're looking at. Even though the report provided was 90 plus pages, it's because we were able to take those data elements and really dive deep into those as opposed to giving the board every data result and providing a more shallow view of the system. And so I think tonight you'll receive a report that provides a depth of understanding around system performance and our response to that, knowing that this report is presented with noted exceptions because we are not meeting all of the targets that we've set forth to do. But the progress that we're making is good in a number of areas, and the response to it, I believe, is in alignment with the board's expectations. And so with that, I will hand it off to Dr. Rose to present results too.
Thank you. And the very first thing I need to do is actually follow up on what Director Guthrie said and recognize Tim Krieger and his department for the enormous amount of work that went into creating this report. That we had some thought that this would simplify things, and it actually made it be really rich and deep, and it made us really be able to look at the complex issues that and exciting opportunities that we have in education as we look at all these tremendous amount of data down to a very granular level. So just to review what we changed, along with what Dr. Holman said, we added some new data elements. So we added grades in all areas. Something that the board was added that we thought was really important and interesting was looking at 3-year cohort data that we'd had discussion for some time over. Our previous R2s had just shown a slice of a year, and it hadn't shown the impact of program over time, and that was something that we really wanted to be able to look at. We removed elements that were in other policies, and we removed elements in other policies that were not part of the real core academic that we wanted to look at. Not that we don't value them, but when we looked at what we want to measure and describe our response to measurement, some of the different pieces like technology, social studies, world language, and arts didn't have that same type of measurement that we could look at. Another shout out to Tim Krieger's department, the world language competency. Just to be clear, that number of 541 students taking it, I think, is up several hundred over the previous years and makes us be one of the percentage-wise highest districts in the state for students taking these exams. So that's exciting. The other piece with the new visual displays is the line graph where the board had really wanted to, again, see performance over time for subgroups. So those are the main changes that we looked at. So R2, as Dr. Holman said, this is our focus on our academic content, knowledge, and skills. The board has the report and is very familiar with the different indicators. One thing that we wanted to highlight, the different indicators are in reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and in mathematics and in science. But it also looks at the mastery of skill and content knowledge and competencies necessary to create, collaborate, think critically, and solve problems. So those are pieces that, as we look at our overall program, we think is really essential to think, absolutely, yes, we are looking at literacy, math, and science, and there's a larger picture, as Tim was talking about, in terms of our goals for our students. So our goals are that students will have, our interpretations, our students will have the ability to perform at or above grade level proficiency in literacy and language skills, and the application part, apply those skills to develop competencies that lead to academic, professional, and personal success. Similar type of metric in math, and a similar type of metric in science for interpretations. The results to indicators, we kept some and tightened the focus on them. We added several new ones that were really important. We added the WIDA, as Tim was saying, is new. We also wanted to look deeper into our program at grades across multiple content areas or multiple courses that we thought were important because they were indicators for on track for graduation, or they were indicators for post-secondary success. So looking at the percentage of graduates with C or higher in Algebra 1, and as a separate indicator, C or higher in Algebra 2 as well. We also added looking at the percent of 11th grade students with 2 or more science credits for 11th grade students, again looking at who's on track for graduation. The other indicators are somewhat similar to what you've seen in the past, but the way that we're looking at them is different, and we're really focusing in on 3rd, 8th, and 10th grade students for ELA, and 5th, 8th, and 10th grade students for math. The reason that we did that is 3rd grade, and this was, of course, in consultation with the board, 3rd grade is a key indicator for literacy. students need to read at third grade. And so that was where we really wanted to say this is a point that we're going to look deeply at it with cohort data for 3 years of achievement for a group of students. Math, we recognize that fifth grade is it's the year that really gives indication for students being set up for middle school and high school success. And so we wanted to make sure that we attended to that grade level. I wanted to step back a moment and go back to Wednesday morning when we had the superintendent's breakfast here, because I was really moved and saw the room be moved by Sergio talking about so many great things. He had so many different celebrations. The whole program was wonderful, but we had celebrations of students, of teachers, of programs that were really wonderful. And at the end of his presentation, Sergio said, "How dare you?" I don't know if you remember. How dare you not see? How dare you look away from students that are not achieving? We absolutely want to celebrate. We have so many great things happening in our district, and we need to look and be very clear of, he used the analogy of roses going through the concrete. That's wonderful when a rose grows through the concrete. We want to remove the concrete. And so I wanted to bring that into this presentation tonight because we have many, many roses, and we also have some places that we are needing to do some work about removing that concrete and celebrating the roses that grow through, but not having it have to be through that. So just wanted to bring us back to Wednesday morning. So one of the things, I wanted to frame our progress in Lake Washington, our achievement in Lake Washington, in looking at some comparative pieces, because when we look at the data, as you have been in R2, we set really high standards for ourselves. So something that's important to do is to frame where our achievement is before we get into looking at our very specific indicators. So when we look at Washington State, and this is straight off of the Washington State Report Card site, you can see that in the spring of 2023, Lake Washington School District regularly achieves significantly above the rest of the state. In math, in ELA, in science, our four-year graduation rate is pretty phenomenal. It's at 94.7 for the class of 2023, and I believe Dr. Holman also last Wednesday said it's approaching 97% for our 7-year graduation rate. So really significant when we look at the comparison with the state. The other piece that's a good indicator to look at for Lake Washington is we have high math and ELA growth compared to the rest of the state. So what that means is 42% of our students are achieving at a minimum higher than 68% of the rest of the state. So, and Tim can give more specifics if we need more details on it, but we overall are outperforming the state and we are growing at high levels. That's significant when we look at the impact of COVID. And as much as we have moved, I believe, I think so many educators, so many parents, so many teachers, so many leaders in this district have said, it feels like this year we're post-COVID, like we're really back in the mix of things and focusing on learning. And we still have students that have suffered some impacts, and we're really thoughtful about that. But when we look at, this was actually from an article that was in the New York Times, again, last Wednesday. I don't know what happened on Wednesday. But this was in the New York Times on Wednesday that had a tool that tracked, that showed this district is Lake Washington compared to Washington state averages and U.S. average from 2016 to 2023. And you can see pretty similar trajectories, which I think is really interesting when you look at, again, our benchmarking cohorts over the past, since 2016, have a very similar, we were impacted during that time and we're recovering. The story in Lake Washington is we're recovering somewhat faster than some districts, but we still need to accelerate, especially when we're looking at specific populations of students. To give, so this is the last slide was our benchmarking districts. This is overall in Lake Washington. So that little dot to the right of us is Mercer Island. So it's a very different size of a district, different population, different things that they're working on. So when we compare to all math scores across Washington State, we're doing really well. When we look at benchmarking, again, thinking about how our district does compared to our benchmarking districts, there are 10 districts that were one of the appendices. In 8 categories, Lake Washington is first or second in benchmarking. If we're second, Mercer Island is first, every time. In 6 categories over this past year, we benchmarked up one, so we can see them all there. We had 3 categories that stayed about the same, and then in WIDA, we again were second. Came in as the wrong verbiage. We were benchmarked at second, and that's a new category for us. And that's a really interesting data point because when we look at where we want our growth to be, we're not there. And yet, other districts have also not figured this out. We are all working on it together. And in 8th grade science, we moved from second to 4th. In benchmarking, we made pretty significant growth with SBA, ELA, in 10th grade. But I want to pause that because it goes a little bit to thinking to your questions about Smarter Balanced and thinking about some changes with that. If we are in a place where every educator is working really hard, and that slide back, if I can go back a little bit, when we look at across Washington State, all of these districts are struggling with their students to meet standard. There are some things that one questions about that. And appropriately, OSPI is questioning. They've put together a project, I'll use that verbiage. They've put together a learning standards review that started last August. And they've essentially said, we interviewed and did surveys, and we got all kinds of feedback from many, many stakeholders across the state who said there are too many standards, especially in math, science, and ELA. There are too many standards to learn in the time that we have. And we've set up a system where our students are failing and our districts are in these terrible spots, and we're not sure students are learning what they really need to. So they're in a process right now where they're in phase 2, which is where they are they're putting together groups of educators to review standards, and we have multiple educators who've applied to be part of these groups, where their goal is that they'll establish a process to review standards, they'll prioritize learning standards and develop an implementation plan. And that bottom bullet, we didn't highlight the most important words there because all of it's important. That bottom bullet in the, I don't know, whatever color that is, trying to decide which one, in that more red color is really describing an MTSS system. And it's really looking at what are all of the different things that a system should be thinking about to deliver education to students in ways that are meeting all of their needs. So I'd like us to keep that in mind as we're thinking about developing a system, because that's really the way OSPI is going as well. The work that we're doing in our district to try to align is something that OSPI is doing. So a couple notes before we dive into data. Lake Washington is achieving it significantly higher than state achievement levels. Our targets are really high, so our coloring in those charts are if we're within, if we're green, if we're within our target range. If we are 10 percentage points away, it's yellow. If we're more than 10, it's red. But our targets are really high, so just to note that. Compared to other districts, we've got strengths to other states as well. Some indicators are lower than pre-pandemic, but most trend up for most student groups. I want to really call out, though, because you saw this in the report, and we will talk about it tonight, our demographic groups of Black African Americans, Hispanic or Latino, students receiving multilingual services, students from low-income households, and students receiving special education services are further away from target than other comparable groups. So any success I say, we know this is something that is really important for us to make sure we continue to hold close to our hearts. The other piece I want to recognize, and this has come up in multiple reports, is that none of this work is separate. So R2 is the academic results, and it is closely tied to R1 and R3. OE10, OE11, OE14, these reports all work together, and the work of the district comes together as well. This is my 7th year in Lake Washington, and I will say the amount of collaboration across departments and divisions is phenomenal. So, with that, as a system, thinking about our theory of action is that if we systematically analyze student performance data, implement evidence-based instructional practices, utilize high-quality curriculum, provide meaningful professional learning for teachers, plan for differentiated support for students, foster a culture of high expectations and continuous improvement, and ensure alignment with state standards, then we will achieve substantial and sustainable growth in overall academic performance across all grade levels and subject areas, resulting in enhanced student achievement, increased graduation rates, and improved college and career readiness for all students. The reason I read that out loud is because all of those parts are really important, and they're part of our MTSS system. And this theory of action engages multiple departments and divisions. None of these things happen without partnering with student services or school support or data and research, or professional learning, or any of these systems coming together. I wanted to call out this slide as well. You saw this in the last study session, that this work is part of our MTSS, and we are right in the middle of it as we're thinking about where our schools, in looking at the FIA, have said that we're in the installing part, which is really thinking about how do we go from the level of data of the satellite data, where we're looking at all these big pieces, and we use that to point us in a direction to map data and street data. So as we're thinking about implementing the FIA, those pieces are all in play. And we're thinking about, especially at R2 is really satellite data, and that data is used by departments and divisions to create map data and then feeding into street data at the school level. As a focus of how we're thinking about change through systemic structures, these are the pieces, again, of an MTSS system. And so the first two are MTSS specifically aligned. As you know, we've expanded our MTSS coaching and principal and special assignment program to reach into all elementary schools. We have focused in on instruction through the instructional playbook in full implementation across every classroom this year. We are, as you heard last meeting, deepening our work on inclusionary practices, and we're keeping OE14 really clearly in our sights. How are we addressing what we're measuring and what's important to us in OE14? The other piece that's really important is thinking about, with the academic program, thinking about change through instructional practice. The main theme I'd like you to take from this slide is the collaboration across the system and the focus on learning. So specialists collaborating, teacher collaborating, thinking about the instructional shifts and the learning happening with multilingual and safety net teachers, expansion of all kinds of curricular resources, including, you heard in the social studies study session that the student services department is collaborating with the equity department, collaborating with teaching and learning to create more resources for teachers and embedding it within the instructional playbook. We have all kinds of advisories on adoption and on some major work that we're doing in the system, and we're aligning all of our required learning for teachers with this work, which is supported through our principal professional learning communities. And that's really where we get into the street data, and that's where we get into the change in a school, is thinking about how all of the work from the district is aligned through the principal and teacher professional learning. And that's where this comes in at the school level. So all schools set academic goals. They implement strategies for groups of students. They use data and identify and provide instructional response. They PLCs in grade levels and content areas, again, take all of those different pieces that are coming from the district level and create specific classroom level, small group, and individual student support. So that's the frame in thinking about, as we look at the data, all of this work is background to the data, the 98 pages that are in R2. So in thinking about where we are with literacy and language, I'll walk us through the three big areas, and I'll do some large noticings, and then you can let me know if you want me to go all the way through or pause at the end of each content area, each subject area, to ask questions. So in literacy, each area is embedded in the response to the data, and actually beyond the response to data, the thinking forward with our strategic plan is thinking about, so embedded in an MTSS system, specific to literacy, we are really focusing in on research-informed instructional practices, enhancing early literacy instruction, developing secondary curriculum alignment and support resources, allocating resources equitably, ensuring an inclusive learning environment, and the other pieces of an MTSS system in alignment with research around literacy best practices. So in ELA, when we look at third grade ELA, there's an enormous amount of data in R2. We pulled this data because the other piece that's really important to look at is our cohort data. So there's many more pieces of data we can look at in R2, but the trend when we look at third grade ELA is this really interesting place that we see in a number of other areas. When we look at our goals for ourselves, we have significant room to grow. When we benchmark and look at how the rest of the state is doing, we're actually doing really well. So it's one of those, again, looking at our students are in some places staying the course. In a couple places that I wanted to call out because they're really exciting, our students eligible for ML services with that growth of plus 4.7 is significant. And that reflects work that has been happening in that program that's really exciting. Again, when we look at our, especially our students from low-income households, this is a theme that comes up across in other data charts, that's an area that we really need to focus and understand and support our students. When we look at the cohort data for that group of students that you just looked at, we put in green everything where there's growth. So thinking about these were students that they were in kindergarten in 2019-20. As we look at growth over time, this group has a positive trajectory for almost all students with the exception of Black African American. Work that has been happening in the system during this time, which really reinforces an MTSS system, is our K2 teachers have been engaging in significant learning around literacy best practices. We changed our what our ML services look like and what our safety net services look like, and we really focused in on instruction for our teachers. So this is an exciting one to look at. We have a tremendous amount of growth to go, and we're seeing some positive results when we really focus in on the professional learning in the MTSS system. So thinking about that, with our goal of all students reading by the end of third grade, we've got, like we said, some notable annual trend growth for students receiving ML programs, ML services. We have some, we've had, in addition to the K2 classroom teachers, there's been that same learning for safety net teachers, multilingual teachers, and a work in progress for special ed teachers to have them have the same training as well. We have really focused on small group instruction to the point where all of our elementary schools worked diligently for this year to be able to have small group instruction happening with intervention blocks in the classroom day.
Sorry. I had a really quick question about the cohort data. Could you, maybe you or Tim could answer this question actually, but is the cohort data, is it tracking by student and then rolling up to the class, or is it comparing class year by class year by class year? So if there's variability in the class, so a student moves out or switches schools, or, well, switching schools wouldn't matter, but
Yeah.
moves out of the district, are we comparing the same students year over year?
I believe it's the same students, but I'll clarify with Tim. Yes, same students.
Okay, so if a student left in second grade, they're pulled from, okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. When we get to middle school and high school, so I think we're seeing in elementary school, I think we're seeing the benefit of focus there. When we get into middle school and high school, we're again benchmarking well in most areas. And again, an area of concern for us is looking at our students from low-income households and our students Hispanic, Latino. Particularly, when we look at the cohort data for this group, we overall see growth, even though on where we want students to be with our goals, we're not there. So we're overall seeing growth, and we're working on focus in how we can really support all these students. One of the things that I think is interesting and important to attend to is when we were in COVID, we did whole system focus on grading practices. And what we focused on was supporting teachers to really assess students for what they learned and what they knew, and giving them multiple ways to demonstrate that. So you'll see in every indicator where it's a grade, you'll see a trend up in almost every content, in every subgroup. The reason, our hypothesis for that is that as we have focused on teachers assessing students for what's most important, we've actually seen grades go up because the grades are more representative of student learning. So we have more work to do there, but it's exciting to see that when these are also grades over the year, so it's not a dipstick once in time. It's not a smarter balance. It's not drop in the hat. With elementary, middle school, and high school, it could be formative assessments, could be FastBridge, could be Amplify assessments. It's a grade that goes into a significant achievement for our students. So we look at that as a really important indicator of the strength of our program. In high school ELA, so again, 3rd grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade, we essentially held the same on benchmarking across all students across districts, we see more variability as we get into high school. And we'll see the same thing in math, and we'll see it more dramatically in math. Students in this time period had potentially more impact of having remote instruction as they're developing more knowledge and more sophisticated skills. This students in low-income households being benchmarked at 9. This is again an area needs to be a significant area of focus for us. This is our lowest benchmark in there. You'll see this is one of the, when we look at the cohort data, this is one where we had the opposite of what we saw earlier on, that we see our students are having a harder time, that we're like, in ELA we're holding kind of steady, but we're down a little bit, which follows the state trend and the national trend as well, and thinking about growth over time with our students in ELA. And then C or higher. Again, we are not where we want to be with our targets, but we're generally trending up. And I think that's a really positive sign for how our teachers are supporting our students to learn. So in secondary literacy, we saw some growth in some areas. These are some of the exceptions in terms of thinking about where we want all of our students to be. Our course grades and our credits show positive growth towards graduation and accumulation. We've had a pretty significant response of aligning and expanding secondary ELA instructional resources, and we've been working with social studies teachers as well as ELA teachers, because especially in middle school, many of those courses have some of the same skills are taught by the same teachers.
Yeah, I think we can pause for questions after each. Director Guthrie.
I wasn't raising my hand. I was giving somebody else a chance. I'm curious about the gap between report card grades and SBAs. On the one hand, yes, appreciate the work to ensure that our students are seeing success, and that you know, I hope that means that they are you know, seeing real success, progressing towards the standards that they need to be learning, and that's reflected in the report card grades. I'm curious, though, with that gap, does that come as a shock? How, you know, when you've been going along and you're passing all your your English classes, for example, and then your SBA scores come back and you're not at standard. And how do we help support too, especially with our 10th graders who are, you know, that's one of the graduation pathways. Maybe like one of the more straightforward ones to meet, right? Because you take the test and you're good to go. So how do we help support students through that gap?
Yeah. So one of the responses that OSPI had to so many students not meeting graduation pathways through SBA was to create multiple graduation pathways. And so that's actually been a pretty strong move from the State Board of Education and OSPI. So they, to the point where they are, they approved in December and did rules in December for performance-based graduation pathways, which is something that we're working on getting in place here in Lake Washington. They also, in terms of math, and I can address this later, they've created 2 different courses that are ways that students can meet graduation pathways outside of the regular progression. So there's Modeling Our World with Mathematics, which is a 12th grade, it could be an 11th or 12th grade course. And then there is, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of it, but so OSPI has created a couple different courses that we now offer in Lake Washington that are meant to be courses that demonstrate, through passing those courses, students demonstrate high levels of mastery of math. And it's somewhat of a recognition that the SBA is not necessarily a friendly indicator or one that reflects what students are actually able to do. So same thing in ELA, that this is passing SBA clearly can be a challenge, which is one of the reasons that they're reevaluating the standards. And I don't actually know what will happen with Smarter Balanced. If they change the standards, if Smarter Balanced is, you know, set to these set of standards, I'm not sure what the state assessment will look like after that. So we in Lake Washington are looking at ways that students can meet graduation pathways separate from that. I don't know that it's a shock to us that the grades are different. I actually think there's been so much really thoughtful work about grading done in schools that I feel like our grades are actually more accurately reflective of what students are able to do.
Director Yogan.
Just a quick question on the 3rd grade reading at grade level from the report card, and I know that that's a box at the end of the second semester that is a check yes or no reading at grade level. How do teachers check that box? Yes or no? What determines that?
So they can have a number of different things where they can determine if they check the box yes or no. So one thing that teachers use, and this is refreshed every fall, is the Assessing and Reporting Handbook for K-5. And so every fall, teachers get an updated version of that gives them guidance on here's what you would assess for, here's how you would look for it. So that's one resource that they have. They also have multiple other ways that they're able to assess students. So formative and summative assessments in the classroom, FastBridge data, their experiences of working with the students. So all the different pieces that they can go into determining with their professional judgment, and frequently as calibrated with their grade level teams to be able to determine if a student's reading at grade level.
When I was looking at the FastBridge and that data, it looks very similar. I'm wondering, do a majority of teachers go to FastBridge end of year and say yes, and then yes or no? Is it sort of, are we using the same assessment kind of twice, I guess? Like FastBridge and
potentially.
end of year?
So FastBridge is a discrete assessment. The report card grade pulls those pieces together. So I would expect, and I can't quantify this, but I would expect that teachers and grade level teams would be looking at FastBridge data, and because they're planning instruction with it and they're using it as a tool to assess if a student's at grade level. But in the report card grade, it's a piece of the puzzle as opposed to a separate discrete puzzle piece on its own.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so looking at math. So generally math, the short story of math is that there's, comparatively again, we are doing well to other districts and to the state, and we have more growth to do here to meet our goals, for sure. So as we're looking at math, and I pull out the pieces that from our working theory of action that are in addition to MTSS, I would say that we are looking at creating additional, sustaining, strategically implementing MTSS line structures, providing professional learning and culturally sustaining and research-informed instructional practices. That's been especially important in our K-5 adoption, and that's kind of key to IM and illustrative mathematics curriculum design. Creating additional course and level-specific curriculum supports, that's at both the elementary, middle, and high school level. Implementing course and pathway redesign, that is significant at middle school. And expanding course offerings at the high school level within the framework of an MTSS structure. So grade 5 math, the story of grade 5 math is, this is a group that this is our third year of implementation of illustrative mathematics. So I would say that we are at the point this year where our teachers have done an outstanding job of implementing a really different curriculum from what we've done before. And we are at the point where we're able to do more intervention and differentiation, especially within thinking about our intervention blocks and how we design math for that, or how we design instruction for our students. However, clearly we have quite a ways to go in order to meet our goals with our students, and that's some of the path that we're really on. This is the first year, I would say, that we've really focused in on doing small group instruction in math. That is something that our older math curriculum didn't really support. So this is something that's been really helpful and goes along with the design of the curriculum. This is something, again, when I highlighted just growth between 2021, so when the students, the 5th grade students of last year were in 3rd grade, most of our students went down. And that makes sense when we look at both the story of math curriculum and we look at math learning during a pandemic when much of the learning was impacted over those years. We do have some highlights, and actually in the groups that we're looking at where we did see growth with our Black African American students, students in low income, and students receiving special education services. Small growth, but it was positive to see that. So this, again, we focused on 5th grade math for the key indicators for future success. We saw overall decline, a slight decline in class of 2030, and we saw some growth that we're excited about. In grade 8 math, this is another one that it's really interesting when we look at our goals for ourselves, we are significantly far away from that. And when we benchmark with other districts, we look like we're doing really well if we're looking at benchmarking. This is a group of students that, and you'll see this even more pronounced in the high school. This is a group that, as much as their achievement looks like we have quite a ways to go, when we look at the work that they've done through their middle school year, 6th grade through 8th grade, most of the groups grew. One of the things I want to call out as a significant difference in their, because they're very different sets of students, is we saw real successes with our ML students, especially in literacy in elementary school, and we really see a different set of data when we look at middle school and high school. Those students are having very different experiences. So that's something I think would be helpful perhaps for us to unpack more deeply with you. But so we looked at, when we look again, depending on the perspective you have, if you look at our achievement and our goals for ourselves, we are significantly away from our target. We are having positive impact with our students when we look at impact over time. So in middle school math, yeah.
We may just want to check the grade 8 on the, because to have all of our student groups growing, to have both genders growing, but to have the all cohort not.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're providing the board with accurate,
Right.
so we'll follow up on that.
Right. So this is one that's interesting. These are like thinking about data and statistics. So in the all group, our annual trend was down 1.8, and we went up in benchmarking. So when we look at growth from, and then we also look at time, that there's multiple different ways to look at the, but yes, thank you.
I'm on the math cohort slide.
Okay.
Go one more, that one. So.
Well, so Dr. Rose said, just touched on something I've been wrestling with, so I'm going to ask it in this context right now. And that is, I don't know, what's the question? The question is, I guess, what do I do with the annual trend data? How do I understand that? Because for so many of these, there's a loud car going by outside. For so many of these, the biggest, when I look at it at least, the biggest driver of the annual trend is whether we are including pre-COVID data or if it only includes post-COVID data. And if you look at, and so if like, we're, for example, for this, we are up 6% since 2021 for math. I'm looking at our report, which has the all of the data, but down significantly from 2019. And then next year, when we look at this, if we keep the current methodology in place, the annual trend will be significantly higher, because the first year that, I think at least, the first year that we're looking at the data, and Tim is not shaking his head yet, no, so the first year that we look at the data will be, the first year that we measured post-COVID. And so, where there's somewhere a question in here, I don't know when I look at the annual trend, it's how do I find meaning in it? I mean, there's some meaning, because we are below where we were pre-COVID, right? Student achievement is below where it is. But other than that, I don't know what to do with it.
I think we're going to have to be really thoughtful about what data we pull in. So I think we can pull an annual trend for pieces, and I think it's meaningful now to look at, we have the story that we were really impacted by COVID, and in some places we were. So how are we responding to that? And I think about one of the pieces, and I'm trying to remember if I included the chart in here. This is an important one to look at. So I think we'll be looking at, like, where in this giant report is the data that's going to be most important for us to look at? Because annual trend, if we did just look at, if we dropped off pre-COVID, I don't know what that's really going to tell us. Maybe something. But I think things like when we look at students who got a C or above in algebra, especially as we look at what we're adjusting in our program, this is going to be, like, I think we'll need to be thinking about what are the pieces of data that are meaningful. And the reason this piece of data is so meaningful is that this year's sixth graders are the first ones that all of them are in our 6+ program. Last year we had think about half. But all of our students are now in a course pathway where the content and the instructional strategies have been adjusted so they can access algebra by 8th grade. So right now, that's important to look at when we look at 1,442 students are in this group for 2023. That's about 60% of our students. And this slide, in terms of data, is actually fairly messy. No, I'm sorry, it's not. This is students who took algebra either in 7th grade or 8th grade, but they were in algebra in 2023. So in a few years, that N is going to be significantly bigger. And it is on us as a system to really track this to make sure our students are still doing well in terms of grades, that they're getting credit for this really important class. So that's kind of a long-winded way to respond to your point, to think about with all of the data, with the 98 pages, as we navigate through time and as we develop our system, knowing which pieces we really need to attend to is going to be really important for us.
Add a response for why the trend is important. I would say because it
Say it wasn't important. I asked to provide
a reason for keeping track of it, I guess, is yes, it can skew based off of the circumstances, but it gives you a viewpoint into the rate of improvement, especially in comparison to the state or to other neighboring districts, so that even though we might have all had this huge increase because of the first year, next year will be the first post-COVID year, you would be able to see whether or not our trajectory or our rate is comparable, which gives unique data, I think, in terms of how we are doing as a district post-COVID and our progress. So that's one of the ways that I look at it.
And I'd say particularly for our subgroups as well. I mean, it's one thing to say, you know, if we had a group that was really high pre-COVID and they dropped and they're on a trajectory up, we are really needing to attend to groups that are not on that trajectory. And so that'll be important for us.
I think the other piece is we're attempting to control for the unique variable, you know, a student group or a class of scores high 1 year. Trying to look at 3 years of data attempts to control for that in a certain way. When I go back to slide 7 and we look at the high math and high ELA growth, I would anticipate next year's 3-year trend to start ticking up at a greater rate than it is or isn't showing right now. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this data, this is the one that I think you can really see the impact of instruction during COVID. So this is looking at our 10th graders for last year. We have a significant work that we need to do with this group of students to support them being able to demonstrate mathematical knowledge to graduate. These were the group that when you look at the difference between their 6th grade, and so they're spanning over multiple years because of the test, their 6th grade scores to their 10th grade SBA, and this is a graduation pathway for them, are significant. So this is where, as a system, where we have got the 2 math courses that we're introducing, or actually they're introduced to some schools. They've been at some schools for a year or 2. Bridges to Math is 12th grade college prep, and Modeling a World of Mathematics is either a junior or senior course post-geometry and can be a graduation pathway course. Those are both coming into the system. Bridge to Math has been in the system for, I think, a year at this point. So those are things that we'll expand. We'll also look at performance-based graduation pathways and have that be something that we're looking at for our students. This is a critical issue across the state. And I say that having testified at multiple State Board of Education meetings about making sure students can graduate, not having graduation pathways be something that stops them from graduating. So this is a cohort that we have significant work to attend to, making sure they have everything they need to graduate. And those 2 courses are great courses. They're significant mathematical knowledge that will help students be able to learn and demonstrate high levels of success with math. So
All right, quick question. So if they pass one of those two courses, that helps them meet the graduation pathway requirements?
For math.
Got it. So that's
Yep.
really giving, especially yes for this group. It's,
Yes.
Those numbers are sobering.
Yeah, and they're cool because they're aligned with what research says about what types of math high school students should have now in terms of it being something that is rigorous and applicable. Like, I'm not going to talk bad about any other math classes, but in looking at like OSPI's recommendation for redesigning Algebra 2, which is something that we're working on, is really different from progressing through a textbook in ways that we maybe learned math. And so that's where we've been really focusing our learning, our professional learning for math teachers, is thinking about how should math be taught in a way that is really recognizing student funds of knowledge, it's relevant to them, it's important, and they see it as something is really applicable for their futures. Yes, our goal is that no student says, I'm not a math person. If someone says, I'm not a reading person, we all go, what? Who says that? But people comfortably say, I'm not a math person, and so our goal is that people don't say that.
I had a curiosity. When I look at all of the math data, I am curious about our students eligible for multilingual services, because math is a universal language, and in theory, 2 + 2 in Spanish is the same as 2 + 2 in English. And yet we have a very big gap between students receiving multilingual services in math and the rest of our students.
Yeah, and that's true across middle school and across high school.
It continues, yeah.
It's a significant piece. I can bring more information back to you about that. I don't have a theory about that at this time.
Thank you.
Okay. So science, again, embedded in the MTSS system. Science, the specific pieces that we're pulling out to support our students above and beyond MTSS are really thinking about the high-quality standards-aligned curricular resources, some new course options, and really thinking about providing more resources to both really to elementary and middle are where we're in need of significant more development. Our scores on the 5th grade WCAS are, again, relatively positive, especially considering that during COVID, literacy and math were prioritized. And so this is a group of students in 5th grade that had relatively minimal experience with science during COVID, which we completely understand. And to think about, we have quite a ways to go to meet our goals in many of our subgroups, and we're benchmarking with most of the rest of the state or higher than that. So looking at, it's something to both be proud of and know that we need more resources in it. So we've done some work to reinvigorate elementary science, and we are back to our regular rotation. We're providing additional resources to teachers. We've reformed our K-5 science advisory. We've provided additional resources for K-5 science and computer science to all of our teachers. So it's been something that we've really been working on revitalizing. We adopted Amplify Science in 2019, was our year of implementation, 2019 and 2020. And so some of the work that we've been doing, and it's come up, I know, in the reading advisory, is thinking about content integration. And we have done a little bit of work in this, but as we move forward with the reading advisory and think about a literacy adoption in K-5, it's going to be really important to think about that content integration to really give value to all the content areas and help students see, going back to that critical thinking piece that is overarching for R2, how these things all really fit together and students can learn deeply. In 8th grade WCAS, again, we had quite a ways to go to meet our goal. One of the things that we think with middle school science, because these scores are not where we would want them to be, we started piloting last year additional supplemental resources that are standards aligned. And that had been something that teachers had done some of the work of standards alignment at the school level, and we'd done course level standards alignment, and really realized we need more significant resources, and we want teachers to collaborate and learn together. So we started a pilot with that last year, and it was really well received, where we thought we'd pilot with a couple teachers, and we had teachers at every school that were engaged in it. And at this point, we have resources out to all teachers for middle school, and we're expanding that. So this is definitely an area of growth for us. And 11th grade science. So this is, I think, a really important one. If students have 2 or more credits as 11th graders, they're on track to graduate in science. So it's exciting to see that we're close in many of our groups. We absolutely have work to do with some of our subgroups, but it's exciting to see as we're setting students up to be able to have, especially in a larger STEM environment that we live in, to have the coursework that they need in order to be on track for graduation and post-secondary success in science. The other piece, and I apologize, I skipped by this, was we looked at our grade 10 students with a grade of C or higher in 10th grade science courses. And it could be any science course, but we're looking at how our students are doing in terms of grades. And generally, again, see a positive trend up in terms of grades. Room to grow for sure, especially our students eligible for ML services. But that's a trend across content areas to see a positive growth in grades, which we think correlates to deeper learning and more equitable practices from our teachers. All of this, we are really doubling down on Tier 1 instruction, and it's something where we think about there are additional resources, there are additional Tier 2, Tier 3, but for all from the systemic level, from thinking about our work in MTSS, Tier 1 is really where we're focusing our efforts. What that looks like, to be clear, is thinking about how instruction is like you can be a science teacher or a math teacher, but you need to connect with the students as human beings, and you need to think about teaching them in ways that really speak to the culturally sustaining practices that we want. So what you see on the slide here, these are the topics of required professional learning for teachers for the year. And I just literally pulled off the sheet that we have. And I'll clarify, when it says strategies to support multilingual learners or strategies for supporting complex learners, that's in the classroom. That's with all students together. So these are the things where we've really thought about what's the learning that we can provide for our teachers to support all students really thriving in a supportive and challenging environment. And we're supporting that with building leader professional learning. So this was a slide you saw 2 weeks ago in the board meeting on our inclusionary practices. So they are the same thing. When we're supporting R2, when we're supporting academic achievement, we are supporting our building leaders with professional learning and collaboration to support our teachers with the same things. There are some specifics that we wanted to call out. So specific for multilingual teachers, they have either been in or have access to these trainings. And for all teachers, we've provided, the multilingual department has provided additional trainings as well. One of the cool things, and I took it off because it made the slide too wordy, was there's a trend of more and more teachers taking these courses over the last several years. So it's exciting to see, like, not only are they there and some teachers are taking them, but more teachers see the need for them and are engaging in them. Very similar for supporting our learning for learners with IEPs, so for teachers, specific for special education teachers is a list on the left, and then for all leaders and teachers. Much of this learning on this side is for either building leaders or for teachers, or really for whoever wants to engage in that. So we have a really strong system-wide and multi-divisional, multi-department professional learning for teachers. So all of these are designed by multiple departments working together to create these learning modules for teachers. And they line up with the building leader learning, which lines up with, which then has options for our different groups. So this is just a brief overview of our elementary focus and the supports that we've put in. You'll see something consistent elements across middle, elementary, and high. So UDL, instruction, leadership, and then some specifics to each content area. Our middle school focus, again, is very similar, with some significant changes in thinking about math pathways and then alignment of ELA, and then science adding some substantial supplemental curriculum, and then some of the same components. And then our high school focus, again, really just continuing that focus with an MTSS aligned system. And I want to just call back again, out of all the slides we've seen, there are definitely things to celebrate, and there are absolutely places in our system that we need to not look away. We dare not look away from the places that we need to focus our attention. And it's exciting to have a system where, from the satellite data and from the district level, to think about the tiered focus that we have with that, to be able to really support from the system level down to the individual student. And we are working through our pillars of MTSS inclusion and equity, and really thinking about our alignment with OE14 and culturally sustaining practices in every classroom.
Thank you so much. I think we'll open it up for questions.
Why does everybody look at me?
Dr. Guthrie, would you like to lead us?
So, sorry, going back to middle school math,
Yeah.
and kind of combining the, the elementary results that we saw, where there's some concern about just that this cohort seems to be scoring lower than previous groups that have come through. We can make what we will of that. But now also combining that with the shift at the middle school level, where these fifth graders, the current sixth graders, as you mentioned, so the fifth graders that we're monitoring right now, who are now sixth graders, there is going to be more expected of them. We are expecting all of those students to complete Algebra 1 by the end of middle school, and for that to be the first class for that to be true of. How are you approaching that, knowing that we're also seeing data indicating that these students may be coming in less prepared than previous classes?
So multiple different ways. One is middle school math pathways was something that's been of concern to us for some time. That we have had about 2/3 of our students access algebra by 8th grade, or by the time they hit high school. And the third that didn't were really, they were students of color, students with IEPs, students from low-income households. And so there was a moral imperative to do something. And so that part was really driving us to think about how we provide a thoughtful system for our students. So what we have not done is just say, we're going to take 3 years of math and cram it together and then go teach the same way. We've really thoughtfully partnered with actually teams of teachers who have, starting several years ago when we first got this pilot going, redesigning the sixth grade curriculum, call it 6+ at this moment. Soon we won't, because it's going to be standard. It's just going to be 6. To add some of the 7th grade standards in. So there was some judicious, like picking and pairing and grouping, to recognize where there were duplications in the standards, and to recognize where students didn't need to spend more time doing something they'd already learned. So essentially a curriculum redesign. And really working with our teachers in professional learning and collaboration, so that we're thinking about teaching in a different way. So the methods that illustrative mathematics actually uses are things that are being implemented in middle school math. So thinking about ways that it isn't the standard math class that I remember of the teacher talks for 20 minutes, then I do some things with my peers, and then I do my homework. But I really think about how I am learning math, how I am collaborating with others, how I'm doing sense making. I actually wonder, and this is a wonder, I think our 5th grade WCAS scores are really strong. And I wonder if some of that has to do with student discourse as part of illustrative mathematics. So that's some of the things that we're looking at in redoing the middle school math pathways and that's why that 8th grade passing Algebra 1 with a C or above is really important for us to track, because we can't let students be left out there when we're asking more of them, and we know they can do it. And part of why that's so important is that if a student has Algebra 1 under their belts by the time they hit 9th grade, and students may not necessarily recognize this, they have access to AP science courses or dual credit science courses or WANIC, or things that they could not access if they were taking Algebra 1 as a 9th grader, or it's more difficult to access. So this just opens a door for them that we felt like we need to support our teachers and our students to be successful in this.
I am going to go back to earlier slide, it was the R2 change at the school level.
Yeah.
And just also want to appreciate all the work that our schools have done in preparing their school improvement plans, which we also discussed this weekend. And reading through the SIPs, I have some questions regarding how R2 is being implemented at the school level. And a majority, in looking through all of them, a majority of the schools are focusing their academic SIP goals on either like the areas here, ELA or math, or some are doing science. Can you I know this isn't really part of the R2, but I'm just curious, how can you help all of us, I guess, understand how SIP priorities are set by schools? Is R2 and R3 kind of guiding this whole process for that SIP process?
That one I might defer to Dr. Albin. Yeah.
Probably a larger question than is answered tonight, partly because some of it is driven by state law and requirement, and so schools are required to set goals in specific areas. There's requirements around levels of engagement and those components specific to school improvement plan. And then there's the actualization of, do our schools have a process that is supported around identifying the greatest areas of need to move the needle for their groups of students? That work is led by Dale Cody and the directors in his division. And he and I actually were just having this conversation about 2 weeks ago around probably maybe thinking differently around our school improvement plans and how do we make a very intentional and direct link to results too. Because as we think about all of the different ways that we're creating through lines for the system, if our theory of action is that that the board leads through policy, this results policy truly should be leading all aspects of the district. And so as you look through the school improvement plans, you can make leaps of, if I'm setting this goal around literacy, how does that help inform results too? But is it directly connected? It's probably not directly connected yet, but that's a conversation we're having because, you know, you can, Dr. Rose's presentation was all about systemic thinking, and that really is, for us, the best way to think about improvement of the system. And so more to come on that, but that's a conversation that we're thinking about as well.
That's a great response. That was just the connection, the connection of board work and what is happening in the schools. And it is interesting to see how different but similar a lot of them are. And I do see a lot of that connection to this. So it is nice. And I just want to thank everyone involved in that because I know it's a really lengthy process.
Can I add one note to that goes to thinking about the street data of that? So there definitely can absolutely be more coordination, more focus on elements from R2. And this morning from 8 till noon, this room was full of our secondary administrators, and they were doing their mid-year learning around our partnership with the Center for Educational Leadership with their our principal PLCs, where they've had multiple learning walks in each other's buildings, and each leader has worked to identify a small group of students that they're most concerned about or that are furthest from social justice, and to be able to have that be that street level data of how are they tracking achievement and understanding the students and the student stories. And I'll say that I've been able to be on several of these learning walks and have been in some student panels and just had it be a really powerful and personalized and very wonderful form of data that is frequently in alignment with R2 and that we can be more focused with that as well.
One other aspect of kind of the goal setting work is our teachers and their student growth goals. So the state is revising the student growth goal process. And so another part of our work, you know, here's something from the outside being done to us, but our responsibility really is how does this, again, connect back to the system and the goals that are already set for us so that there's alignment in the system. And so that's work that's ongoing right now, I believe, scheduled for implementation next school year.
Yep.
And so that's work that's going on right now.
Earlier, John, you mentioned in relation to SIP, too close, there was certain laws that hemmed us in. I'm trying to figure out whether they hemmed us in, they helped us, or what. But what I'm getting at is what could be done to improve the environment, if you will, that we're trying to improve in, to improve our students, to be quite frank.
I haven't looked at that RCW with that lens.
Okay.
We've always kind of looked at the RCW related to school improvement planning and how do we make it work the best we can? Because there is some language that's a bit archaic, and so I know our legislators are always asking for low-hanging fruit and no-cost changes that can make a difference for schools and kids. So maybe we tackle that for next legislative session, because best practices around school improvement, I think you heard today what that looks like, and I'm not sure that's how that RCW reads.
Given the concern about the post-COVID dip, I think this might be an opportune time for looking at some of those to really help support the schools in looking at their improvement programs.
Director Liberty.
I continue to be caught up on this annual trend thing. But I have a question specific to 8th grade students meeting state standards on the state science assessment.
Okay.
I was going back through all of our for almost all of the state standardized tests, the scores cratered in 2021, right? The first time it was measured. Cratered is not the right. Maybe cratered is the right word. If you look at it, it looks like a crater. Like literally, that is what it looks like. There's one of the anomalies for that, though, is 8th grade state assessment data, and that in 2021 it was actually higher than in 2019, and then it wasn't until 2020 that it went down. What can you tell me about the assessment? Did it change materially in 2020 from? I'm sorry,
I will have to
in
get back to you
2022
about that
from
unless
2021?
Tim, no, it did not change materially in that time.
Okay. It's an oddity in the data. For the rest, the trends are fairly consistent from 2019 through the present. The graphs all look relatively similar in terms of shape. This is a different shape.
This is, I don't know what the anomaly is from. Our response has been to really strengthen our curriculum and our instructional resources, but I can't explain what the anomaly is at this point.
Okay. I have a comment, but I'll save it for the comment period of our.
Yeah. And it is something, in thinking about the data that's in here, to Dr. Holman's point, this is something that we actually really want to center in our work in all of our divisions and all our departments and with our schools. So this will be something that I will be able to provide more of a hypothesis or more information about.
Okay.
Nope. Okay. Hearing no more questions, thank you, Dr. Holman. Thank you for the overview and the clarifications. Now it is the board's responsibility to consider the report as evidence of the district's performance in this results policy. A reminder of the criteria we have agreed to. 1, the superintendent interpretation of the current policy as written is reasonable. And 2, the superintendent has provided evidence to assure the board that the organization progressed the provisions of the policy. I will now entertain a motion to accept and approve the monitoring report as having made reasonable progress with noted exceptions.
So moved.
Has been moved by Director Liberty and seconded by Director Stewart that the board accept and approve the monitoring report as having made reasonable progress with noted exceptions. Is there any further discussion? Director Lillibert.
Okay, my last comment on the annual trend data, and it's actually I want to commend Dr. Holman and staff for including. I was looking at what our business rules were for how we agreed to monitor annual trend data, and we agreed there would be the annual trend calculated by determining the slope best fit line for the last 4 years, unless otherwise noted. Well, we actually expanded further for this because we didn't have 4 years ago. There was no testing, and so I appreciate keeping that data from pre-COVID. The numbers the trend data would have looked, for almost all of these, would have looked much better had you could have gone either way with this. You could have said, well, we're going to do 3 years because we didn't have a 4th year. And I appreciate expanding back, because I think it does tell it, particularly when you look at the graphs that are in the report, it tells a full picture, a true story of where where we've gone in the district and where we're going. And so I guess as I think about, when we monitor again next year, I'm not directing this at this point. A wonder I have, and I almost am asking for this, but I think I want that 2019 pre-COVID data to still stay in the monitoring report, so we can still see where we were pre the disruption to the system that we're still coming back from. I do think it's helpful to have that benchmark when we're evaluating this, and for the community to be just transparent about where we were, what the standards that we expect, because we know we achieved at that level before, and we know we need to be there again. And so I that's not what we've agreed to in the report, but I think we should look at that for the upcoming years.
Posit a question of how long do we continue that?
I have no idea. I do not have an answer. Yes.
Director Guthrie.
I'll go next. Yes, thank you for pulling all this together. Again, tremendous amount of work, but it's very helpful to have, I think I've called it satellite data from another solar system. It's like super satellite data, but to have a really good overview of the entire system. I'm really excited about the improvement for multilingual learners in elementary. I really want to call that out because it seems really promising that we've been doing some really purposeful work in that area to improve instructional practices, and that's exactly the sorts of results that I would expect to see from that particular group. I think in the write-up, mutually supportive content integration was called out, and I was glad to see that call out because I'm really excited about the potential of that to really make our results even better in science, making sure that kids are getting exposure not just through science but through reading as well. And as we continue to internalize that as a system, and just the potential for that to have some really amazing impacts on students. I also really want to call out that high math and ELA growth. It's really impressive to have high growth when you're already performing at a really high level. So that's really super impressive that not only are we above the state average in terms of our overall results, but our students are also growing faster than the state average over those already high results. That's really remarkable. And so I want to make sure that doesn't go unnoticed. I will continue to stress third grade reading. I wonder how many of those those kids who are struggling through middle and high school as multilingual learners, as students on IEPs, as low-income students, comes back to third grade reading, because the pictures go away, and the text just. My third grader brought home a worksheet the other day for homework, and it took me a while to just parse all of the text and figure out what it was asking. She needed support with that for sure. So wondering how many of if we're really focused in on that area, is that going to improve the results throughout the system? Middle school wet math as well. I'm so excited. I agree that it's a moral imperative. Looking at the numbers in OE14 for just the gaps in student access to algebra in middle school, we do have to do something. And we've got a bunch of classes of students coming through who They only get one shot at 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And so making sure that we're really being honest with ourselves about how well we're supporting them through that transition. I would really love to see sort of leading indicators as they work through the system. I don't want to be back here in 3 years monitoring R2 and be like, oh my gosh, we completely messed up middle school algebra, especially for some of those subgroups that we're really concerned about. So continue to keep an eye on that. And then our 10th graders, just making sure that they have access to those different graduation pathways, because yeah, it's yeah, they were 10th graders, they're 11th graders now, and you know, we've got a year and a half left to make sure that they find the success that they deserve. I'll stop talking now.
Director Yoakum.
I just really want to echo the middle school math as well. That, yeah, sorry. I just want to make sure kind of also what you said along the lines of we don't want our students walking away, especially from that, if it's this new process that they're saying, I don't like math, I am not good at math. Like, that is my biggest concern. Just ensuring that we're really following them. I really just appreciate what you said right there. I can't say it any better. So.
I'd like to echo, I think especially the growth for our multilingual students, K through 3 and literacy is very encouraging. It's exciting to see because we have been putting additional effort in that age range specifically as a district, and being able to see this cohort data now, I think, is going to be very helpful. That being said, I will articulate again that for me, specifically for when I see that gap for multilingual students who are receiving multilingual services in math in particular, I get very concerned because that would be the one area of school that technically a multilingual student potentially shouldn't have more trouble in, because math is a universal language, and it makes me very curious to I wonder how much of math now is dependent on whether or not you have your reading in English, and I feel like we are handicapping some students in an area that they could actually excel in regardless of what their first language is. And when we talk about closing gaps for students, this is a demographic that we have looked at, and looking at those numbers, I really want to dive into it. That being said, thank you so much for all the data. I know when I first opened this report and I saw that it was 97 pages, I was a little bit concerned, but then when we dove into it, there are so many things that are popping up now. The focus areas and the story makes so much more sense. So I can tell the effort that went into getting this data for us, and I very, very much appreciate it. I'm very, very excited to see where we go from here. And yeah, just thank you again. Okay, I think that's it.
I'll throw out one more thing too. The cohort analysis, super, super, super helpful. Really love that perspective on the data, and I think that's going to it's going to answer a lot of questions over the years that we don't even know to ask right now. So thank you for that especially.
Hearing no further discussion, we will proceed to vote on the motion. It has been moved by Director Liliberty and seconded by Director Stewart that the board accept and approve the monitoring report as having made reasonable progress with noted exceptions. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Hearing none, the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is Public and Community Affairs. This portion of the business meeting of the board is an opportunity for any board members to inform and provide updates from organizations or groups they engage with on behalf of LWSD. Do we have a staff pledge update today? Oh, Okay, Dr. Holman?
Well, as the board knows, it's a short session and it goes fast and furious. And so we do have an update on a number of bills that we're tracking tonight. And so here to present is Associate Superintendent Barbara Postumus.
Thank you. Let me get my PowerPoint up. Okay, so just wanted to provide a quick update. Today is the fiscal committee cutoff, so all bills must be approved by their fiscal committee by today. So just a reminder, we've shared with everybody our legislative priorities. I did a PTA lunch and learn, I think a week and a half ago. I shared an update at the monthly PTA meeting and gave them kind of a bill summary of the bills we're watching. So short session, as Dr. Holman said, the fiscal cutoff is today. So I'm gonna just briefly go over some of the bills we're watching, and the hearings are still going on right now. So we may learn more. The House Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means, they spent all day today in executive session. The education bills were last on the agenda. So then they go to floor consideration before the chamber cutoff on the 15th. So 5 of the bills that we've been tracking did not advance, and more may drop off by February 15th. So we've provided written or video testimony 15 times and signed in pro on certain bills 5 times. So I'll just go through quickly. Some special education bills that we're watching are, summer evaluations, about restraint and isolation, and then special ed safety net. And all of these are awaiting. The first one's awaiting floor consideration. The second one was approved by House Appropriations today, and the last one is still in executive session, so I don't know the status of that. We're watching some capital and construction bills. The first one regarding sales tax use is scheduled for executive session today. And then the funding opportunities, that's our LGO bill. That is getting the House referred to that for rules for floor consideration. The Senate Ways and Means did not hold a hearing on this. So we're working on the House side to keep it going. So transportation bills, the first bill, 5873, is, I believe that one is scheduled for executive session, so we'll know more about it later today. And then the second one about the zero emissions buses is in the Rules Committee. And then our staffing bills, I shouldn't say our staffing bills. There are staffing bills that we are watching. So the first one is about fundamental course of studies for paraeducators. That is awaiting. It's passed the House last session, but it's awaiting a hearing in the Senate this session. The next one, the prototypical school staffing, which actually has significant additional funding for districts and could reduce some of our funding gaps that we talk about. That one has been, the Senate bill is scheduled for executive session today. So we are also watching some curriculum and graduation requirement bills, a lot mandating new requirements, and so they are all scheduled for hearings today. And so the first one about the financial education has gone straight to the Rules Committee. So again, some of these we were already incorporating, such as the Holocaust and genocide education, or the Holocaust and genocide education, and others would be new requirements for us. So there's another bill, which is a levy bill that increases the levy limit, Senate Bill 5956. The Senate it's in executive session right now. The House did not take action on that. So So, and then these are bills that we were watching that have missed the policy cutoff. They still could be, they call them dead, but they still could come back through some other action. So both simple majority, unfortunately, the 55% and the simple majority failed to advance again. Again, we were encouraged because they talked about them early. The agricultural literacy requirement did not go through. Again, that would have been a new requirement. And then universal meals, the one at the bottom, did not go through, but we expect to see that coming back each session. So we are continuing to contact our legislators, and we encourage our community to reach out to legislators to encourage them to support our priorities and don't implement new requirements without funding. So that's it. Quick update. Any questions?
I don't believe so. Thank you very much.
All right.
I have an update I was fortunate to attend the National School Board Association's Equity Symposium as well as their Advocacy Institute in Washington, D.C. last week. It was my first time attending, so it was a big learning opportunity for me personally. We were able to do a day on the Hill, and I had meetings with Senator Cantwell's staff, Senator Murray's staff, Rep. Delbenne's staff, and then Rep. Schreier's staff, and she also popped in as well. Our main focus areas for advocacy were around IDEA funding. Just for insight, legally, the federal government should be paying for 40% of providing 40% for our IDEA funding, and Lake Washington School District receives about 11%. And so it's a... Are you okay there, Dr. Holman? I caught you off guard there. To be fair, that's a lot of people's reactions when they hear that percentage. But so I mean, all of our representatives are aware and supportive. We got some interesting advice this time around, I think, which was to try and target our advocacy, particularly to members of the appropriations committees. And when we meet with our representatives, you're preaching to the choir. They're already on board. They're already signed on. They are already in agreement. Those are not the people that we need to be advocating to. And so they had specific suggestions for kind of who to reach out to and potentially have conversations with. Other areas of interest really focused around AI considerations and technology in learning in classrooms. I think there's a big interest right now among our federal legislators, but also our state legislators around kind of what's going on with AI. So we had lots of conversations around that. Universal meals is something that the federal government is actually also very interested in, and it might be coming from the federal government before our state takes action on it. And then the other area was conversations around the impacts of the Clean School Bus Program, implementation for the grant money that was allocated, the thought process around it, as well as moving forward potentially, what they should be looking at. We had very broad conversations around those topics. So yeah, I think it was an extremely productive trip, and I will encourage my fellow board members to also attend this conference, I think, in the future. Does anybody have an update from the WASDA Advocacy Day on the Hill? Director Guthrie.
Everybody's looking at me tonight. Yeah, so Director Stewart and Director Yoakum and I went to Olympia on the 24th of January, week, 2 ago? I don't even remember. Yeah, we met with some representatives, talked about our legislative priorities. Now, of course, I don't have them pulled up in front of me who exactly we met with, but we met with 3 of them, 4 of them, and also attended the Senate Early Learning and Education Committee, one of their hearings. It was an interesting experience. We weren't testifying or anything. There weren't any bills that were of like particular interest to Lake Washington. I'm sorry, Shivani was there too. My goodness. Yes, thank you so much, Shivani. She took time out of finals week to come, so she deserves, for sure, a special commendation. She was teaching us all about Russian history on a break. So yes. So we got to listen into a committee hearing, which was, very, very interesting and entertaining at times. Just to see the diversity of perspectives from across our state on some different issues. So that's our report.
I think unlike other times, in my 10 years on the board, we've only met with our representatives within our confines. And this time we targeted specific individuals who either chair or have a stroke, if you will, in committees that will have an impact on our issues that basically had never been introduced to us before. And this is a concept that I've advocated for a while, and I want to really thank staff. Caitlin Cox is a godsend in that respect. She knows it, she gets it, and she knows how to use it.
Yes, Shivani.
Do you want the names? Because I remember them. Okay, it was Wilson, Stanford, Brood, and then Schaefer. I don't know how I remember that. I remember that over Russian history, but yeah.
You have a mnemonic for that?
No, I don't know why I remember, but anything to skip school.
Thank you, Shivani. The next item on our agenda are committee updates. Would anybody like to provide an update for their committees? Director LaLiberty.
So since our last board meeting, I attended the Facilities Advisory Committee meeting. I believe it was last week. I've lost track of the days. And in particular in that meeting, it focused on community feedback on our communication strategies around the information the district provides about our facilities and our different measures that we've had around that, and some great feedback that was collected at that. And I think that will then be brought back. I think that the expectations will be brought back to the committee again at our next committee meeting. So it was a great, robust conversation.
Director Guthrie.
Yes, there was a meeting of community connectors last Wednesday, and it was a super interesting meeting. It went some directions that I wasn't expecting, but very productive. I got a lot out of it. Scott Emery started off by talking about some data that his department has started collecting around community resource officer interactions at school and sort of accounting for the time. That more detailed data, this is in addition to what's already mandated and mandated by the state and collected by the police departments. So they've got a sort of a draft of a Power BI dashboard that allows to look at how CROs are spending their time, which campuses are they on, what sorts of things are they doing while they're there, are they having interactions with students, are they doing education, and so on. And that was all directly coming from feedback from this group, so it was really exciting to have that brought back. John, you looked like you wanted to say something. No, okay. Yeah, sorry. And then we went into an interesting conversation around what is safety, which went a lot of different directions. So not just seeing community resource officers as providing safety on campus, but all sorts of different ways, different things that make students feel safe. There were a ton of connections with R3. There was even, we were about a week removed from our conversation as a board and with Deputy Superintendent Beebe and Gillingham about revisions to OE3. And there was a lot of talk about community partnerships and how can we engage our community to help. It was kind of boiling down to a sense of belonging was sort of what that being really, everybody feeling like that was really key to students feeling safe at school. And so thinking about how we can partner with our community to increase that sense of belonging. So yes, lots of very interesting connections to the work that we're doing here as a board. It's always, I realize that I haven't really explained, but this committee is like none other that I've been on in all my years in this district, in that for the most part, district staff and certainly myself, we don't talk very much. And it's really a conversation among the community and among there's a lot of very diverse perspectives in the community. I was sitting at a table with a community organizer and then a representative from a police officer from Redmond, Kirkland, and Sammamish police departments, 3 of them. So that's not I don't usually sit at tables like that. And to really have, different district staff is there, Director Ortega is there, and so on, and facilitating. But it's really a chance to hear from the community and hear what's on their minds. So it's I continue to enjoy every one of those meetings and get a lot out of them. So thank you to all the people who participated and all the staff who make that happen.
We're going to go backwards for a second. Dr. Holman, do you have a superintendent report?
Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't bring to you some very exciting, a very exciting update around athletics across our district. There's been probably 2 sports for the last, 10 years that have constantly been kind of a buzz. Lacrosse is one of them, and flag football has been another. And it's pretty exciting to see girls flag football blossoming really across the country. We are just one of the locations across the country that is participating. A number of our neighboring districts are participating as well. And so our girls just wrapped up their season, and so I thought I would share with you some of the information that came from it. And so by the numbers, we had teams from all 4 of our comprehensive high schools. Over 150 student athletes participated. It was a 5-week shortened season, so kind of a launch to test this new sport in the system. They each had 6 games, and then over the weekend they had a Lake Washington School District Championship tournament. Appreciate the Seattle Seahawks for their generous donation of uniforms for each of our schools. It was about $2,000 for each school in terms of uniforms and supplies. This is a sport that's being considered under WIAA to be an official sport, which means there would be an official pathway to a state championship. And so I know our team is supportive of that because we would love to see this become part of the overall portfolio that is available to our student athletes. We like it to be a state sport because the excitement to be able to play a sport at that level and win a championship, it's not only fun, but it brings pride to our schools. It's motivating. We also know that this is under consideration to be a sport at the 2028 Olympics. So it's pretty cool. And so, but I'd be remiss, again, if I didn't actually share with you what the students said about this. And so our student athletes were heard commenting on Saturday that this was so much fun. We've improved so much as the season went on. I can't believe the season is over. And I want to congratulate our Lake Washington High School flag football team for the inaugural season, Lake Washington School District Championship. And that is that's exciting. And we want to see a KingCo championship. We want to see a state championship. And so the last comment I will leave you with was girls being heard as they were leaving the field that day. I can't wait until next year. And so you can imagine to put any sport together takes a lot of effort and energy. There was surveying done ahead of time to find out participation rates. And at the end of the day, what I continually heard was the joy of kids being together, participating together, competing, and they just had a ton of fun. And it was very, very competitive. And so it's exciting. Appreciate this launch and can't wait to see where it goes. So that's my superintendent's report.
Next item on our agenda are school visits. The next school visit will take place on February 6th at Kamayakin Middle School and then Redmond Elementary School. I believe we have 4 of 5 board members that will be attending. The board plans to meet next on March 4th for a study session at 5 p.m. and a board meeting at 7 p.m. And then we will be having our extended study session from March 16th through the 17th. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the February 5th, 2024 board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? At
Any determination about moving the April 22 meeting?
9:37 p.m. Thank you.
Has there been a determination made about moving the April 22 meeting because it conflicts with the first Seder of Passover? Okay.